to the dignitaries, faculty members, research scholars, students, and one and everyone present on the virtual platform, either the Google Meet forum or YouTube Live. We are honored to have among us today two eminent speakers, Professor Dipankar Sen Sir, Associate Professor of English and Joint Director of Public Instructions, Education Directorate, Government of West Bengal, and Dr. Suranjana Bhadra Madam, Assistant Professor and Head of the Department of English, Srirampur Girls College. Warmest welcome note to both of them. Before I request Professor Dipankar Sen Sir to go ahead with his deliberation in the first session, may I now request Dr. Nadugopal Mukherjee Sir, Reader of the Department of English, Bankura Christian College, to formally introduce Professor Sen. Over to you, sir.
Thank you, Tathagato, for giving me this opportunity of introducing Dipankar, my junior in the hostel where I stayed for my masters. And we used to be there in a very core group. Dipankar was a member of that core group. And amongst us, all the time we shared our emotions, ideas, or rather we had a lot of addas. And so it's a kind of adda when I find Dipankar to be there back and ready to hear me, ready to rather interact with me. It's a kind of, again, adda, which we have got back once again, even though it is now on the virtual platform. Dipankar Sen, at least in Bardhaman University, Purulia University, Sidhukam University, and Bankura University, I really need not introduce him because a lot of people are there who are contemporary to Dipankar or maybe senior or junior to Dipankar, and who all of them know Dipankar very well. And I'm referring to him as Dipankar because, as I said, he happens to be just my junior. And so I don't really refer to him as Professor Sen or Dipankar Sen or as JDPI, an academic administrator. Rather, he is my junior brother, and so I refer to him as all the time as Dipankar. Now, Dipankar, when I asked for a kind of bio note, categorically told me that he does not believe in all these paraphernalia. And there are people like Dipankar who who are rather shy in nature, so far their academics are concerned, and do not really want to say much about themselves to the people. Dipankar is one such person. Anyway, whatever I know about him, Dipankar Sen, one of the best students of his time. I'm taking into consideration the level of the students of Jadavpur University, Calcutta University, Presidency, Bardhaman University, and all those universities of that time. One of the best of his time. That means even though he did his post-graduation from our university, that is the University of Bardhaman, was also there at Jadavpur University for a short while, but later came to Bardhaman University. And thereafter, he served, when he started his professional career, he served different government colleges, starting from Durgapur Government College. Thereafter, so far, if I am wrong, Dipankar will definitely correct me. Darjeeling Government College, Durgapur Government College, what I know, I think he also
Jhargram Raj College.
No, I was not there. No, I was not there in Jhargram Raj College. In fact, like I had a second stint at Durgapur Government College. After that, I was transferred to Sanskrit College, which of course became
thereafter Sanskrit College, Sanskrit University now.
Right.
And thereafter, only last year, that is in 2019, he started a new chapter in his life when he joined as DPI, Joint Director of Public Instructions, Education Directorate, Government of West Bengal. So we really want to see him back as what I should say, as an academician more than as an academic administrator. Because Dipankar Sen or people like him should be there in the academics, not really in academic administration. But it's up to him, up to Dipankar Sen, to choose what he will be doing in future. Anyway, so it's my privilege, and I'm really so excited to introduce Professor Sin. Professor Sin has a varied character, has a very dynamic character, and has been a very successful teacher. All of us know that. And not only Oyun, but the people who are there on the virtual platform know very well what an erudite scholar and what a great teacher he is. So now it's over to Dipankar Sin. Dipankar, please.
Thank you very, very much, Tathagato, who sort of introduced me, and then of course Naruda. It really is an absolute pleasure, and I say this from the core of my heart, to be among friends. I have very fond memories of Bankura Christian College because years back, decades ago, I had this opportunity of being present at a seminar in Bankura Christian College. And that was a lovely experience that I had, at that point of time. There was Gautam, there was Naruda, and there were others as well. And we had a wonderful, wonderful time in that seminar. Naruda has said a lot of things about me, and yes, it is true that since August last year, I have been looking at files and not really been paying as much attention to books as I should have. And this is something that bothers me. This is something that worries me and depresses me at times. But again, I have tried to sort of, take this responsibility in my stride, and I'm trying to sort of do as much as I can in my limited capacity as one of the officials at Press Program. I'll come to my presentation. When Naruda sort of, when he floated this idea to me, and when he proposed that I join this series of web lectures, one of the first things that I told Naruda is that, Naruda, whatever else I do, I'm not going to present, quote unquote, a paper. For two reasons. One, I don't really have the time at this point of time to prepare a proper paper per se, and do the requisite amount of research to come up with a full-fledged research paper. The other thing is, as somebody who has been, who's into administration, and somebody who has been looking at sort of things that are happening in the field of higher education, especially during the type of lockdown, I think it is extremely necessary that we reach out to our students as best as we can in any form that we can, and try to sort of help them out, because they have been hit very, very hard by this global tragedy, if I may use this phrase. And today's presentation is something that I have designed keeping students in mind. I'm not exactly sure whether Waiting for Godot is a text that is studied by undergraduate students or postgraduate students, but I think since this is one text that is commonly anthologized in all collections of dramatic works, and this is a favorite text of framers. I think Waiting for Godot is almost an inescapable sort of text. And the other thing that I had told Naruda was, I am not going to give a title to my presentation. It's not going to be a paper, as I said, and if it is a presentation, I'm not even going to give a title. I'll just say that I'll present my random thoughts, my random musings on Waiting for Godot. And that is how it is going to be. So I'll start with Waiting for Godot, and I'll share my thoughts, and it would not be a bad idea to sort of take questions as I go on. I mean, I don't mind that. I wouldn't mind those. I wouldn't sort of consider those interjections as interruptions. Or we could sort of, have a small question and answer session after my presentation, whichever works the best. And after I have finished talking about Waiting for Godot, I wish to sort of move to something else. And hopefully I'll be able to sort of, mesh in the two texts that I will be speaking about. So with these words, I'll enter my presentation per se. Actually, when I said that I would be speaking on Waiting for Godot, I was not exactly being truthful, because I'll not really be talking on Waiting for Godot or about Waiting for Godot, the play. I will rather focus on a very specific component of the play. And what I will also be doing is, I'm sorry. Am I audible?
You are audible.
You are. You are audible.
Yeah, thank you, thank you. Something happened and I thought that maybe I'd switched the enough. Okay, fine. As I said, I'll be looking at this tree in Waiting for Godot. And I will also assume that the students are more or less familiar with the text if, I'll assume this, because of course in a presentation like this, there is hardly any scope of going through the text, so to say. So I'll assume that you students know what happens in Waiting for Godot, or in fact, this is one text where nothing practically happens. This is about this remarkable nothingness. Nothing much happens in the text. But then, if we remember, there's this very brief, sparse stage direction right at the beginning of the play, where Beckett writes, "A country road, a tree, evening." So it's basically giving us a setting. There's this country road, there's a tree, and the time of the day is evening. My focus will be on the tree. And what I will also try to do here is not really talk about Waiting for Godot as a printed text, as a literary text, but I will take Godot as a performative challenge. I will look at Godot as a text that always challenges performers in various ways, performers, directors, and theatre, people who think about theatre generally. On a rather personal note, for the last 4 or 5 years, I have been trying to do something that I had always wanted to do, that is engage very, very seriously with theatre. And to a certain degree, I will say that I have been able to immerse myself in the world of theatre in a state, in Kolkata and West Bengal, and I've been trying to do some theatrical work. When I say that I've been trying to do some theatrical work, I mean that I am actually into theatre, soul and body. I'm part of a small theatre group, and we have a few productions that we've already come up with, and I play certain roles in these plays. And the other method through which I keep myself engaged with theatre is by writing about theatre. I off and on write these reviews in Telegraph, and the theatre reviews in Telegraph. And this is something that I've been doing for the last couple of years. So when I will, so this is what I'm going to do. Okay, as I said, this is going to be rather random, and I'll be rambling at times, so please bear with me. I have seen that in literature classes, we look at dramatic texts as if they were texts to be read and read only. We do not generally think of these texts as having been written in the first place, not really to be read, but to be staged, but to be performed. And of course, there's a very good reason as to why we do this, because our discipline demands, that is, literature as a discipline demands a certain method of looking at texts, a certain perspective of reading texts, a certain approach to read texts. But when we start looking at dramatic texts as texts that are not meant only to be read, but also to be performed, that is when we begin to see how certain things that we take for granted sometimes gloss over while reading a text in an exclusively literary way, how such things become extremely important, problematic even, when we are trying to sort of bring this particular text onto stage. And a phrase that I have been working with the last few months is from the page to the stage. What are the challenges that one faces when one is trying to take a text from the page to the stage? And while attempting to take a text from its printed avatar and to take it onto the stage, what happens to our understanding of the text? Does the understanding remain the same, or do we now begin to understand the text differently, see it in a different light, as it were? So these are the questions that, these are the issues that I wish to sort of, briefly touch upon in today's presentation. So, as I've already said, this is how the play begins. There's this country road, and there's this tree, and it's evening. Now, very quickly, we know that the tree is referred to by the two main characters, if I can use this word, main in this play. Both Vladimir and Estragon intermittently speak about the tree, they talk about the tree. And as we all know, nothing that they say actually really goes on to sort of, mean something very final and solid. So there are these broken references to the tree that we encounter. I'll sort of read those bits later. But let us think about the tree not from a literary perspective. That is, let us not start thinking about what the tree might mean, what the tree might imply, connote, symbolize. because these are the things that we try to think about. I'm not saying, by the way, that these are unimportant questions to ask or irrelevant questions to ask, not at all. But when we look at the tree from a performer's point of view, from somebody who's trying to enact Waiting for Godot, somebody who's trying to bring Waiting for Godot onto stage, we will see that the tree will actually begin to pose certain problems that we do not even consider while reading the text. For example, the stage direction just tells us that there is this tree. Now, look at this phrase, stage direction. A stage direction is, of course, as we all know,
Hello, sir.
indeed.
Sir, sometimes
sorry.
your voice is breaking. I think there are some audio issues there.
Is it?
Yeah. Sometimes your voice is
Okay,
breaking. That's it. Otherwise, it's okay.
Okay, I think it's the network.
Yes.
That's responsible for this. And
For some network issues.
is there any trick that I can sort of apply to?
No, you really can't.
Minimize this problem. Oh, I'm sorry.
You are helping.
Yeah, we'll have to sort of make do with whatever
Yes.
technological support that we can
Sure.
get.
Go on, sir.
Yeah. Okay. And I'm doing it from my phone directly. You see, I'm not on a laptop because I have the laptop open in front of me, but I'm looking at the text, I have the PDF of Godot. So, and I needed that. Okay. As I was saying, let us just sort of let us assume, let us posit a hypothetical situation where we are trying to bring Waiting for Godot onto stage, that we are performing this play. Now, if that is what we are trying to do, one of the first questions that the director will have to grapple with is the visual of the tree. I mean, what sort of a tree is it going to be? I mean, for example, later on in the text, it said that it's a willow. But again, we cannot really be sure because we can't really take anything that either Vladimir or Estragon says at face value. So it might be a willow, it might as well not be a willow. But as a director who wants to bring this play onto stage, there is this first basic issue that the director must solve to the best of his ability and to the best of the resources that he will have at hand, is what sort of a tree is he going to bring onto stage? And then, of course, there's this thing called the stage itself. Now, we know that there are various types of stages on which dramatic performances are presented. We are familiar with the proscenium stage. We are familiar with the proscenium arch. But then there can be other stages as well. For example, you can have a stage where the audience might be seated all around the circular performing arena. Or you could have this play being performed in a small room, a studio theater sort of a space. And you could also think of taking this play outdoors. In fact, this has been done, and I'll show you evidence later. Now, the question that a director must sort of try and answer is, what sort of a tree is he going to bring onto the stage? And that will, to a very large extent, be determined by the stage where the performance will actually happen. I mean, the size of the tree. The size of the tree will certainly be determined by the size of the performing space. Is it going to be a huge tree? Will it have many branches? Of course, the tree has to be a bare one in Act 1, because that is how the tree is presented. In Act 2, the stage directions tell us that the tree has sprouted a few leaves, 4 or 5 or 6 or 7. We're not very sure. And, we're not very sure as to the number of leaves that this tree will sprout in the second act. Again, the moment we think of the tree that was bare once but is now sprouting leaves, we start thinking in terms of what the leaves might imply or symbolize or suggest. My point is, from a performative aspect, these thoughts will be these thoughts will be absent, I can assume, from a director's mind when he's trying to think about the tree and the special challenges that the presence of this tree will present while performing this play. You see, imagine a space, imagine a performance space where this play might be performed. Let us work with an imaginary rectangular space, right? Within this rectangle, where exactly will the tree be placed? Will it be placed plumb in the middle of the rectangle? Should it be taken to one side of the rectangle, either to the right-hand side of the performance space or to the left? Should it be brought forward? Should it be relegated to the background? Should it become almost part of the backdrop? Where will one place the tree? You see, it is important. It is important for us to think about these questions, because if we now begin to look at this text, not merely as a literary text, but also text that can be performed, we will begin to understand how important these questions and these issues will become for a director, for a set designer, and also for the person who's going to design the lights. Because the tree is going to be a very, very important part of the visual, of the scenography that will be presented to the audience. The audience will always be looking at the tree. The tree will always be present in their range of vision. They cannot unsee the tree even for a few minutes. The tree will be there, and the tree will remain there. And we who sort of deal with theatre, and we know that it is extremely important. It is extremely important that whatever is presented on the stage will continue to be of importance, will continue to be of significance in terms of the performance that will unfold. That is, if you have something on stage, if it is a part of your set, if you have something which is part of your set, that thing has to be meaningful. It has to emit meaning, generate meaning, and be relevant and significant in terms of the performance at all points of time. And again, something like a tree, which is obviously, it cannot be, I mean, if you think of things that we bring onto stage, let us think, I mean, we can have, let us say, a chair on a stage or a table on a stage. It would be very commonsensical to assume that in terms of sheer size, a tree is going to be much larger than pieces of furniture. So if you are dealing with this large, static, immobile object, and the tree won't be moving, certainly, if you're dealing with this large, immobile object that you will have to place on the stage and keep it on stage throughout the length of a performance, you have to think about its size, its shape, and you also have to think about its position. Because the performance that will unfold will have to happen keeping in mind the presence, the looming presence, if I might use this phrase, the looming presence of this tree, the presence of the tree which can never be ignored. And the point that I'm trying to make here is this, and this is an important point. And in fact, whatever I've said so far is trying to build up to this point that I'm making. But when we read Waiting for Godot in the literature classroom from a literary perspective, we tend not to pay too much attention to the tree. I mean, it is not that by not paying too much attention, we are doing the text a great disservice. Rather, if we really think about it honestly, we will find out that when we read the text from a literary point of view, we tend to privilege the human characters more than anything else. We don't really think of the time of the day, do we? We don't really think too much about the country road, which, by the way, is also part of the stage direction. We rather think about Vladimir, Estragon, and then the other characters that come later on. We try to give to them a certain primacy which we deny to the other components. But my point is, if we are trying to perform this play, things that we were not really looking at when we were reading this play from a literary point of view suddenly begin to become extremely important, even problematic. Unless a director and his stage designer, unless they have been able to really come to terms with the tree, unless they have been able to cut the tree down to size, as it were, performing Waiting for Godot is not going to be easy. You see, a literary text, like Godot will allow certain liberties to the director, even as it will limit directorial independence in certain ways. For example, Naruda, there's just one thing that I would like to sort of say. I'm sorry, I'm interrupting almost. Is it okay if I sip some coffee? I mean, is it okay?
Why not, sir? Please do.
I'm sorry.
We would
Thank you so
have
much.
served the coffee if you were with us in person. So please have your coffee, sir.
Thank you
And
so
be
much.
comfortable.
Thank you so much. And everybody else should also sort of have the same privilege. And please go ahead if you wish to have coffee or something. Please go ahead. This is one liberty that this platform has given us, and so we should make the most of it. Thank you so much, Navid. As I was saying, okay, this coffee has distracted me a bit. What exactly is it that I was saying when I broke? Can anybody help me out here? Which will also give me an indication as to whether anybody is at all listening to.
Yes, Dipankar, you are speaking about the tree, about how to manage the tree on the stage, or whether to cut.
Oh yes, I remember. I was yes. Yeah, directorial independence. Right. Thank you, Devamitra. Nice to have you here. It's so nice to have so many known faces, and it's almost like a reunion of sorts. You see, for example, there have not been, and this is something that I have been trying to find out. I was looking at whatever I could in the last few days. Directors who have sort of staged Waiting for Godot have not really taken much liberty with the characters, in the sense that these true tramp-like sort of characters remain more or less the same in almost all the productions that have been created. And the characters don't change much. And this is something that I have been able to sort of glean in my looking at this particular text from this particular perspective. The tramps remain tramps, of course, depending upon the available actors and on other situations, the ages might sort of change. Sometimes you can have old actors, mature actors playing Vladimir and Strahovski. Sometimes you can have younger actors playing these roles, but they remain tramps, and whatever they say, whatever they do or not do, mostly remain more or less the same. But then that is not the case with the tree. And this is where Naruda will help me out. Naruda, at this point of time, can we just have a look at some of the images? Can we start with WFG1?
Dr. Narugopal Mukherjee is presenting, so please keep him pinned to see the images.
Not this one, Naruda. Not this one.
Okay, then which one did you say?
The file name is WFG, Waiting for Godot 1.
Okay. Just a minute. Sorry. Yeah, this one.
Yes, thank you so much. I have deliberately not chosen to sort of identify the performances. I do not even know which performance this is and where this particular performance took place, who with the actors, director. I have no idea, and I do not even know when this was performed, but I'm solely and exclusively interested in the tree. I do not know whether everybody can see this picture very clearly. It's
it's visible, sir.
It's visible, no? If you look at the tree in the background, the tree is hardly a tree. It's just an arrangement of a few sticks, and it actually it resembles more like an umbrella, the cloth of which has been taken away, and it looks like the spokes of an umbrella. And this is the tree that this particular director has come up with. And at one point of time in the play, one of the characters tries to sort of go behind the tree and hide behind the tree. Now this tree, of course, will not be a very good hiding place. This is not going to provide any sort of visual obstruction, and there's no way an actor can hide behind this tree, which again is a very interesting point, because the person who goes and tries to hide behind the tree fails to hide behind the tree, and this is a tree that we see in one of the mini productions of Ready for Godot. Can we go to the next one, please? Now this would be the very next one. Yes, this one. See, this time this tree at least looks more like a tree than the other tree that we just seen. And immediately, this can give us an idea as to the approach the directors have taken in the two productions. For example, we can assume that the previous, and this is of course assumption, right? I might be entirely wrong here, but going by the way the tree looks, we can assume that the previous production was one where the focus was more on underlining, emphasizing the abstract nature of the text itself. This play, this particular production, where you have a more realistic looking tree with plenty of bare branches, most probably we can assume, we can guess that the director was trying to take a more realistic approach at presenting this play, if at all realism is a term that we can use in connection with Waiting for Godot, which is a very, very tricky thing to do and a very dangerous thing to do. If we move on to the next image now, okay. This is very interesting because here we have a tree which is quite elaborate, but we also have something that not quite resembles a country road, but it does give us a sense of a pathway. And as you can see, the point that I was trying to make here is this, that these are the liberties that are inbuilt within the text, the liberties that a director might take, and these liberties are there within the realm of possibility of the text itself, that this is how this particular director and his stage director. They have interpreted the country road, and this is how they've interpreted the tree. And of course, we have evidence of quite elaborate and well-designed lights in this particular production. The two figures remain more or less the same. If you've been noticing the way they dress, the costumes don't change much too. But if you notice that it is simply the difference that the tree and some of the other elements of the set bring about, it's completely changing the visuals. And when the visuals change, the manner in which the audience will receive the performed text will also change. No two productions of Waiting for Godot can be exactly the same. I mean, even if it is a question of a repeat performance, as we all know, no two theatrical performances, even if there is a repeat of the same performance, even if a particular production goes on to have n number of shows, no two performance can remain absolutely the same. But here we have productions that diverge, that become very different simply through directors and other technical hands imagining the tree differently. The next picture, please, now. This is interesting because here we see this play being performed outdoors, and there is actually this country road. But interestingly, if somehow, I mean, I don't know whether this can be done or whether, if you can zoom in and sort of, if you can try to sort of, give us a better visual of the, better sort of sense of the tree, because I'm interested in the tree more than anything else. Yes, thank you so much. Thank you so much. This is perfect. Very interestingly, the tree is not really part of the landscape. The tree has been planted there inorganically, and the tree is extremely abstract. Whatever it looks like, it certainly does not look like a willow. It's just it's actually a sculpture. It's actually a sculpture that vaguely resembles a tree, which then sort of brings us to a very, very interesting question. What might have been the approach of the director here? On one hand, he's taken this performance out into the open, and where, of course, you actually have a country road, you actually have this empty space, unmarked by anything else. But then you have this, extremely evidently constructed tree, sort of planted in the backdrop, which underscores the fictionality of the presentation, which actually emphasizes or tells us very clearly that this performance is make-believe. This is fiction that is being created. It sort of very clearly and very powerfully brings to our minds the notion of artificiality, if I may use this term here. The next image, please, now. Yes, again, if I have to sort of, be a little funny here, I think this tree was designed by a set designer who was denied his full payment because he's not done too much work with the tree. And the tree is extremely minimal, which gives us a sense as to the approach this particular director might have taken while designing his performance. And it just has a couple of branches and nothing else, and it's a very, very elemental, basic tree, which is not probably even a living tree. And this tree again is not going to provide any of the characters any sort of possibility of hiding behind it. So what I have been trying to sort of do, and what I've been trying to arrive at in all this rambling, is that thinking about a text from the point of view of the stage will bring us, will make us encounter issues and problems which we might not be very aware of if we were only looking at this text as a literary text. Waiting for Godot, as we all know, is a text that is notoriously difficult text to interpret. And that is, of course, part of Beckett's intention. I mean, he did not want his text to reveal its quote-unquote meaning very easily, and we don't even know whether meaning at all is important, or whether there is at all any meaning in Waiting for Godot, or whether we should even be hunting for meaning in a text like this. But that is something that we always try to do. My point is, you see, all these different trees that we have seen tell us one thing. It might tell us many more things, but thank you, Naruto. You can sort of, like take us back through the series of images. We can sort of have another quick glance at trees. What these various trees do is that they tell us that these productions are designed in a manner that invites a very vital participation of the audience in the process of making meaning. A performance begins to become meaningful not merely through the performer's performances, but also through the audience's reception, understanding, and of the performance, and their response to their to the performance. You see, let me try to put this as simply as I can. As we all know, Waiting for Godot is basically about a waiting that does not come to an end. All the characters, they keep on waiting for something to happen which does not happen. They keep on waiting for someone to turn up who does not turn up. So this play is about this interminable, unending waiting. As the performers wait, so do the audience. Because it's part of the protocol of viewing, consuming theatrical performances, that we wait for the action to take us somewhere. When we sit in the audience, we wait for the narrative, for the plot to take us on a journey. But this play does not take us anywhere. We simply wait, like the performers, for something to happen. And every time we think that that thing is going to happen, we are frustrated, like the performers. And at one point of time, without probably even us being aware of it, we become performers too. We become involved in the performance too. What the tree does, the tree, in whatever shape or form it might be presented to our viewing, the tree reminds us of seasonal cycles, of time passing, of waiting actually. You see, the tree, as I said, was bare when the play opened, but it sprouted a few leaves in the second act. At least something has happened to the tree which has not happened either to the performers or to the audience. So there is this dichotomy that is created through the tree. And my theatrical experience is increasingly telling me that in theater, meaning is generated. In performance, meaning is generated not merely through the actors' doings. If we can think of a language of theater, this is a language that is very composite in nature, a language that will involve and draw in elements of the set, the costumes, the light design, and other components as well. And the performance of Waiting for Godot, I think, will be a performance that will necessarily try to draw in the audience in the act of waiting. And this brings me to my concluding part of my presentation. Yes, thank you, Naruda. Yeah, let us stay with these two images for some time. These two images are from an extremely important and cult performance by a theater practitioner, a performer par excellence by the name of Marina Abramovich. The name of this performance is The Artist is Present. It was first performed at the Museum of Modern Art in New York in 2010, where Abramovich sat in a chair. The person in red is Abramovich, the performer, and there was this table and there was this chair opposite her, where members of the audience came and sat in the other chair, and the performer and the audience member simply gazed at each other without either of them doing anything, without either of them even saying anything to each other. And this is a performance that went on for days. So every morning, Marina would sit in a chair and the performance would go on uninterrupted for hours at end, 8, 10 hours every day. And people would sort of, throng in great numbers, and whoever had their chance, whoever had their turn would come and sit across Marina, and the two would lock gazes with each other. This picture is interesting because here we have Marina doing something. She's actually reached forward and she's touching the hands, the fingers of the person who's sitting across her. This particular guest or audience member was a surprise guest for Marina, at least, because this man, his name is Ule, and Ule happened to be Marina's partner and her collaborator once upon a time. For 13 years, Marina and Ule had produced their plays, their performances together. And in 2010, when Marina was presenting or performing, the artist is present, by the time Ule had sort of, charted out on his own, and they had not met for years together, and it suddenly dropped in and Marina was taken by surprise. So the performance of this particular performance, the artist is present, was one in which Marina, Marina wanted to see whether at all anybody would be interested in coming and simply sitting in a chair across her, not saying anything, not doing anything, but simply connecting to her through one's gaze. And surprisingly, thousands had turned up to have this opportunity to take this chair across Marina. Not everybody could be accommodated, unfortunately. And this was a wonderful performance. It was an extremely interesting performance, and a lot of critical attention has been paid to this particular performance. I'm not going to go into that at all at this point of time. I don't have the time also for that. But to me, Marina's performance invariably reminds me of Waiting for Godot. When Marina used to sit in her chair every morning, waiting for somebody to turn up and sit across her, she never knew what would happen. She never knew whether somebody would actually turn up. But people did. People turned up. And sometimes the mutual gazing would go on for hours. Neither Marina nor her audience member knew when that particular performance would end, when that particular segment of the performance would end. So in a sense, each performance, each segment of this performance had the possibility to go on and on and on without coming to an end. My point is, Marina has not said this explicitly, but I would tend to believe, I would tend to assume, and I will risk my neck by suggesting that if at all we have to think of any predecessor to Marina's work, one work certainly is going to be this one, Waiting for Godot. And I'll leave you with a small video where you will hear Marina speak about this performance, and she will actually say why in the first place she had designed the performance like this and what was her intention behind designing such a performance. And somehow, if we listen to Marina carefully, we might be able to connect what Marina is saying to our understanding of certain aspects of Waiting for Godot. Now over to you and the video, please. Is the link active now?
Sir, is the link active?
Do you see Ayun?
No, sir.
You don't?
No.
Okay. Yes.
Yes,
Now I
exactly.
think you have to click that link.
Sir, please
Yeah.
click.
Just a minute. We are doing it. Please wait.
I would request all others to switch their videos off.
Because we
Let
are
us
doing
all focus on
everything
the
to
speaker.
actually cut that relation to ourselves.
Now do you see?
But
Yes,
here
yes.
I made a stage.
Yes,
for
yes.
this, that they can be able to do that.
Yeah, can you turn the volume
Something really
on
happened
and
there,
like
which was different than anything I'd done ever before. And during that time,
It's audible, sir.
this idea of the Marina
না
Abramovich
এটা কিন্তু অনেকটা এগিয়ে এসেছে নারুদা you have to go to the beginning of the
Institute
speech
of the time.
একদম একদম শুরুতে yes
Actually,
yes.
it was going on. Here it was going on, but I don't know how you didn't see it.
Okay, now we can
The
see
artist is present. I decide to be there in the entire duration of the time of the opening of the museum, which means 3 months sitting there. I knew this is a big chance to show the power of performance art. I prepared for this piece almost a year.
Just a minute. Let me switch off myself.
Because I knew it's going to be physically so demanding, so difficult. The curator was just telling me, you have to be ready that in the front of you will be empty chair most of the time. Because nobody could imagine in New York, the most busy place in the world, that would anybody take time to sit and just engage in mutual gaze with me. So it was complete surprise for myself, to the entire staff of MoMA, and to everybody else. This enormous need of the humans to actually have a contact. How we are so alienated from each other. How the society makes us really distant. You know, we are texting each other messages without seeing each other. And we just live around the corner from each other. So many stories of loneliness. And the people not just occupy the chair. There was no 1 second when this chair was empty. They start sleeping outside of the museum and they start waiting for hours and hours and coming back. And what is happening there? I'm looking at you. You're photographed, you're filmed, you're observed by everybody else in this atrium. So there is nowhere to go but into yourself. At the moment when you really get into yourself, that moment bursting with emotions, with so much feelings, And this is why so many people start crying. They become such an important experience in their life. We are not doing this in our own home because we are doing everything to actually cut that relation to ourselves. But here I made a stage for the audience that they can be able to do that. So something really happened there, which was different than anything I'd done ever before. And during that time sitting, this idea of the Marina Abramovich Institute, MAI, came to my mind. It was so clear that I have to do something with this experience, and I have to bring this as a legacy, something which is bigger than anything else I've ever done. And it's not dealing just with the art anymore. It's larger than art. It's dealing with the culture itself.
That's it. Thank you so much. I'm done.
Okay, thank you, Dipankar.
I'll have to sort of, thank everybody for the immense patience and for enduring me for this long. I wouldn't have been able to do this myself. Thank you so much.
Mr. Bijoy Chand Pal, could you please switch off your video? Mr. Bijoy Chand Pal?
Sir, please switch off your video.
Okay, now it's over to Tathagata.
I came to make the House Production Review in Sean Kelly Gallery. I've basically been 12 days in the gallery.
Sir, please switch the video off, sir. Indian, sir?
Now that's...
Yes, stop presenting, please. Yeah. Thank you. Over to you, Tathagata. Tathagata? Okay, dear.
Yes, sir.
Are you audible?
Yes, sir, I'm audible.
Okay, please.
Thank you, Professor Sen, sir, for that illuminating lecture. Now, may I request Professor Ayan Mondal, sir, Assistant Professor and Head of the Department of English, Bankura Christian College, to conduct the interactive session. Over to you, sir.
Thank you, sir, for such an illuminating session. At the outset, this is my humble request to all to please switch their videos and their audios off, because it distracts the speaker, it distracts the smooth interaction. Anyways, I find that there are quite a number of questions that have come up. So if Professor Chen allows me, I can read out the questions to him one after the other, if you have the time.
The point is, if we try to do all this, we'll be eating into Professor Bhadro's time, which is not going to be a nice thing to do at all. But then, of course, I see that there have been many questions. Ayan, could you just select a couple which you think might sort of be general sort of questions? Yeah.
Okay. There is a question by Devomitra D, Dr. Devomitra Chakraborty. Do you think that the tree can also be presented as a mute onlooker, a representative of nature, especially through third theatre?
Of course, yes, and why not? Actually, Devamitra, what I did not want to do in my presentation is that I did not want to sort of, enter the realm of interpreting the tree. I mean, what the tree might mean, or what the tree might sort of, suggest or mean. The tree might mean many things to many of us, and I was simply trying to sort of draw attention to the fact that by having the tree within his text, Beckett knowingly or unknowingly sort of had opened up an area where directors and stage designers would go on to have a lot of issues with. And by the way, very interestingly, and this is something that I found out, that Beckett himself was he had seen some productions of his text, of his play, and he was quite unhappy with the set design, and he was generally unhappy with the way the tree was being presented. And he, in a famous production where he took on the directorial mantle, he actually collaborated with a very famous sculptor to come up with a tree which he thought would do justice to his idea of the tree. And they had a very, very hard time designing the tree, and not just designing the tree, but also sort of positioning the tree in the space where the play actually went on to be performed. So the tree became quite a bit of a challenge for Beckett himself. Yes.
There is a question by one of our former colleagues, Professor Anindo Shen. I had watched stage performance of the play. I had watched a stage performance of the play in Bangla translation long back, Godor Protikkhay, in which there was vigorous action with reference to taking off boots, Lucky's tirade, etc. What is your take on the view that the tree is given implicit theatrical centrality when one of the characters say, "Let's hang ourselves immediately"?
Exactly. This is something that I wanted to sort of indicate, not explicitly state so much. Theatrical centrality is a very, very important point that Anindo mentions. That the tree is something that you cannot ignore. My point that I was trying to make, Anindo, is simply this: that while reading the text, we tend to overlook the tree, which is something which we can never do if we are watching a production of this play. My point is, things that are not quote unquote so important in our reading of a text become extremely significant and important in our watching the play being performed. And I completely agree with your take that the tree is indeed it's an object around which the scenography of Waiting for Godot is organized. It's the central pillar around which the rest of the visuals will have to be organized. And in fact, if you pardon me for using certain stage terms, technical stage terms, for example, when a director is blocking, blocking is a term that we use in theater to mean the positions that the characters will take vis-a-vis each other and vis-a-vis the other components of elements of the set or props. When a director is doing the blocking, the director has to do the blocking, giving centrality to the tree. I mean, there's no way the director can do the blocking by not taking the tree into account. The only exception, Anindo, that I can think of to this particular strategy or plan is if this play is performed out in the open. There, of course, the director will have certain freedoms, certain liberties which an enclosed space will not provide to him or her.
So this is the last question.
Absolutely.
In fact, there were a number of questions, but I'm forced to filter. This is a question by Vishwajit Mollik. Sir, why is tree, which is generally a symbol of life, used as an instrument for committing suicide? Is it just because the playwright wants to accentuate the theme of absurdity, or does it symbolize any other thing?
Well, I think you have hit the nail on the head. Yeah, this is after all an absurdist masterpiece, and the tree, of course, I mean, if you think of leaves as being something that is positive, something that indicates the coming of the renewal of life, renewal of the seasonal cycle, the tree does sort of, introduce or inject a ray of hope in this generally hopeless ambience of the play. The play is extremely gloomy and depressing. But then to look at the tree not as something that brings hope, but rather, as you said, as an instrument of suicide, it meshes perfectly with Beckett's absurdist worldview. It's an ironic. These characters, they don't look at things the way we look at things generally, and that is why they are so unique. That is why their vision of things around them, the vision of the world and their philosophy is so sort of, frustratingly difficult to grasp, understand, or even make any sense of.
Thank you so much, sir. Now over to my student Onnesha Pal. Onnesha, are you there?
Am I audible, sir?
You are audible. Please go ahead.
And visible.
Yeah.
Thank you, sir. On behalf of the Department of English, Bakura Christian College, I would like to convey my sincere gratitude and thankfulness to Professor Dipankar Sen sir for illuminating us with such an insightful and extremely engaging discussion. Thank you, sir, for accepting our invitation and sparing your valuable time for today's session. On behalf of all the participants, I would like to thank you once again for presenting some new horizons of the play Waiting for Godot. All the faculty members, research scholars and students who have participated in this session will surely be benefited to a great extent from this thought-provoking deliberation. Thank you, sir. Thank you very much.
And thank you, Dipankar. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Naruda.
Sorry for that interruption, because that was actually going on here. Somehow there was a gap.
You don't have to be sorry for anything.
Thank you so much.
It was wonderful and আমার খুব ভালো লেগেছে and
আমারও খুব ভালো লেগেছে স্যার।
Thank you so much. আমি জানি না আদৌ কিছু হলো কিনা, যাই হোক যেটুকুনি হলো আমি আর এটাই ভালো লাগার যে আমি আবার ছাত্রছাত্রীদের মধ্যে আসতে পারলাম, যেটা আমি আজকাল ইদানিং পারি না, সেটা আমার একটা প্রচন্ড ভালো লাগে এবং অবশ্যই কিছু বন্ধু মানুষের সাথে আবার যোগাযোগ হলো। Thank you Naruda, thank you Oyon and everybody at Bakura Christian College for giving me this wonderful opportunity. Thank you so very much. Thank you so very much.
Now I would like to request my senior Tathagoto Bose, which is second semester student of our department, to formally conduct the second session. Over to you, Tathagoto.
Thank you, Anisha. Our second speaker in today's session is Dr. Suranjana Bhadro Madam, Assistant Professor and Head of the Department of English, Srirampur Girls College. Now, I would like to request Professor Oyen Mondal Sir, Assistant Professor and Head of the Department of English, Bakura Christian College, to formally introduce Madam. Over to you, sir.
Thank you, Tathagoto. I am really privileged to introduce again my teacher, one of my teachers, Suranjana Di, Dr. Suranjana Bhadro. Dr. Bhadro is working at present as Assistant Professor and Head of the Department of English, Srirampur Girls College. Before joining her present college, Dr. Bhadro has served quite a long time at Bardwan MUC Women's College. She is a gold medalist of the University of Burdwan, standing first in the first class in her honors examinations and subsequently third in the first class in her masters. Dr. Bhadro has 17 published papers and book chapters published in different national and international journals. She contributed a chapter in Hubli Heritage Management Strategy published by the University of Liverpool. Dr. Bhadro was awarded second prize in poster session in the second Regional Science and Technology Conference in 2017. She pursued her doctoral thesis on the semiotics of the post-50s British playwright Caril Churchill and takes an active interest in theatre and theatrical techniques. She is an exceptionally successful teacher and served some time as an invited guest faculty of the University of Burdwan, in fact, when I was a student there back in 2010. She is a member of Feminist India Group and INTAC. Suranjana Di will talk about Brecht and Brechtian techniques today with reference to a text which the Bakura University fourth semester students have in their syllabus, The Good Woman of Sichuan. Without much ado, may I invite the endearing, affectionate, and a very docile teacher performer, Suranjana Di, on this virtual stage. Dr. Bhadro, please.
Very good afternoon to everybody. I am greatly honored to be a part of this web lecture series. I would thank Bakura Christian College, the entire team, Principal Sir, the Department of English, my dear students, and my dear student Oyo for giving me this privilege to present my paper here, at least to share some ideas with you. I would like to congratulate BCC for this wonderful venture. So congratulations and thank you once again. And Oyon, what a grand introduction you have made. And really, I can't express my happiness to see you here, and I'm equally happy to be here. So today, in my discussion, I am going to speak on the Brechtian technique, and I'm also thankful to Dr. Dipankar Sen for introducing it to you in certain respects. You can understand the link between Dipankar Sen's lecture and my discussion today. So today I'm going to divide my discussion into two parts. In the first part, I'm going to talk about Brecht, his contribution to theatre, and in the second part, I would focus on the text, The Good Woman of Season, followed by the impact on Brecht on Britain, the post-Brecht era, and finally a bit of criticism on the Brechtian theory. Now, before moving on to Brecht, I'd just like to point out something. Yes?
Excuse me. Suranjana, could you move the camera a bit to your right? To your right. No, you have gone to the right. No, the camera should go to the right.
এখন ঠিক আছে একটু পিছিয়ে বসো সুরঞ্জনা দি একটু পিছিয়ে বসো এই তো ঠিক আছে it's all right now
it's okay Suranjana okay
but am I audible?
You are perfectly audible.
Okay, thank you so much. Okay, so before moving on to my paper, I'd just like to point out that Brecht can also be pronounced as Brecht because of the German origin, as you all know. So, the dramatist, the playwright, director, poet, Brecht is one of the more major influence on 20th century drama. So I just want to move on to my presentation. Okay, I have a presentation. I'm just moving on to that.
Visible now.
I think it's visible to all of you.
Yes.
Okay. So, then the poet, playwright, and the director Eugene Bertolt Friedrich Brecht was one of the most significant writers of the 20th century, and his influence on modern theatre has very often been compared to the influence of Franz Kafka in modern novel. So, Brecht's works are firmly grounded on the social, cultural, political realities of the first half of the 20th century. And Brecht's technique, had twofold impact on the post-Brecht era. On the first hand, Brecht provided the playwrights stimulating ideas, new modes of dramaturgy, revolutionary strategies. And on the other hand, he also provided a new theory of political theatre. So on one hand, there is a technical perspective, and on the other, we have the theory of the political theatre. So from these two perspectives, we can find that the impact of Brecht is very much greater. Now, if we can say that for Bernard Shaw, the audience existed to be educated, for Brecht, they existed to be re-educated. As you can see in the slide here, that the name Bertolt Brecht is a brand name. Okay, because very often the plays which we know to be written by Brecht is actually written in collaboration with women who were in love with him. Okay, so and these women were definitely intellectuals, scholars. Okay, so just in this context, I would just like to quote one line from Harold Bloom. Harold Bloom says, Bertolt Brecht as we read further, was a brand name applied by Bert Brecht, a survivor, to the writing of some of the women he made love to and exploited. Okay, and so you can see the name of these great scholars. They are Elizabeth Hoffman, Margaret Stephan, and Ruth Burlock. And the play that you are going to read definitely is written in collaboration with these women. So the dramatist Brecht is a fiction. I put it within quote. So Brecht is a fiction, as larger parts of his work were composed in collaboration with other authors or other collaborators. But what I feel that this strategy of Brecht is something new and innovative. Actually, he was not that much interested in writing plays of his own. Okay, so he loved this kind of open-endedness. And this strategy actually inspired the post-modern or the post-Brecht dramatist who wanted to work in the form of workshop theater or collaboration theater. So actually, he was a firm believer in this concept of openness. So this, by doing or this following this kind of collaborative work, he was in fact going against the conventional hierarchy of the author, the director, and the actor by providing space to multiple voices, providing several mini narratives too within the play. Next, I will just give you a brief sketch of his life. That Brecht was born in southern Germany in 1898. During the First World War, he started his education in the Munich University Medical School in the Department of Philosophy, but he could not complete his graduation because he was very much attracted to theater. Because of his tremendous commitment to theater, and he devoted himself to that. Now, this was also a time of the Hitlerian regime, and he was a lifelong anti-Nazi. Okay, and this is definitely his heroic aspect. He defended Stalin endlessly. So when Adolf Hitler, when there was Adolf Hitler's seizure of power in 1938, Brecht emigrated. He was expatriated. That means he had to leave his native land because of these political, social situation. And he was in exile. But the artist's art is an exile's art, because most of his works were written during this time of exile or after that. So he was stateless, and later on in the year 1950, he again got the citizenship of Austria along with his second wife, who was also a very famous actress of the time, Helen Weger. And together they established the Berliner Ensemble. This is a very popular theatrical organization. It is a German theater company which was established by the husband and the wife as a contrast to the classical Weimar theater in Germany. Now, from the name Weimar theater, you can understand it was a sort of follow-up of the Weimar classicism, which was prevalent in Germany during that time, which lasted for 30 years, from 1772 to 1805. And it involved intellectuals like Goethe, Schiller, and it was a literary and cultural movement. And the practitioners established a new concept of humanism, romanticism, classicism, and the age of enlightenment. So they were influenced by these ideas of romanticism and classicism. But the Berliner Ensemble, you can see that what a gorgeous and well-lighted stage and audience seat you have here. Okay, so this became a worldwide recognition for the post-war Berlin stage. In 1954, Brecht became the vice president of the East German Academy of Arts, and finally he died in 1956. and the works of the Berliner Ensemble was carried out by his wife and also Elizabeth Hoffmann, who was the editor at that time. Now, this entire canon or this institute of Brecht, they wrote more than 30 plays, 150 prose texts almost, diaries, letters, roughly 2,000 poems and songs, many fragments, and 3 novels. Okay. And this is, I feel, one of the greatest influence on contemporary theatre. In 1923, Brecht started to work as a theatre critic and a literary manager for the Munich theatre. The late 1920s is very significant because at that time, Brecht got acquainted with 2 great things. One is the writings of Karl Marx, and the second is Erwin Piscator's Political Theatre, which was published in 1929. So these 2 were the greatest influence on Bertolt Brecht. He remained faithful to the socialism of both the Soviet Union and the later German Democratic Republic. An immediate reaction to his reading of Marxism and political theatre were the didactic, anti-individualistic plays, which are also known as the learning plays. They are called the Lehrstück. You can see in the PPT here. So these Lehrstück were written mostly for the school students, right? So the school students actually, they were the target so that they could learn. They could learn and they could remain involved in the political activities, bringing about a social change. So bringing about a change was a very fundamental concept of Brecht. So these plays were mostly written in 1929, 1930. So these plays did not entertain as such, but they were very much educative to the audience. In 1936, in an essay, Brecht developed the concept of the culinary criticism. Okay, now what is this culinary? You see, there is also a bit of humor in using this word culinary with theatre. So culinary theatre to Brecht is a stage serving a palatable fare to which the audience reacts emotionally. They rejoice at the good fortune of the hero and they shed tears at the afflictions. Okay, so this involves a total emotional engagement of the audience only. But in such kind of theatre, the audience are just passive recipients. They have to absorb the emotional tablet that the dramatists are offering them. Brecht and Piscator's concept of theatre is totally a contrast to this concept of culinary theatre, and also the tendency of naturalism that cropped up in 18th and 19th century. Okay, so and as a reaction to this bourgeois theatre, naturalistic theatre, the culinary, Brecht develops his notion of the epic theatre, with which you are all to a certain extent familiar, at least with the name. So epic theatre has its roots in the intellectual situation of the bourgeois society and the voices of the proletariat. Okay, so such a conception of the theatre was developed as a reaction to the 18th, 19th century naturalistic theatre, whose major proponent was Stanislavski, Konstantin Stanislavski, who pioneered this concept of naturalistic theatre by creating a fictional world through his plays. He developed the concept of the fourth wall. Okay, the fourth wall realism, which you can see here, the fourth wall realism, which Stanislavski terms as public solitude. Okay, so through this public solitude, the audience actually remain engrossed in the stage performance, emotionally attached to that probably having purgation of emotions, and finally calm of mind, all passion spent. And at the same time, the actors who are acting there, they are also totally dismissing the audience who are a very important part of theatre. They are the targets, but the actors do not take into consideration the audience, and everybody feels that they are reading the room in a closed form. Okay, so this is the concept of the fourth wall realism, and Brecht's theatre. This concept of the epic theatre is a total departure from this concept of naturalism. And the naturalism developed a social situation, and it tries to restore a sort of balance. As a contrast to that, epic theatre was designed to be revolutionary and Marxist, bringing about a change by the conflict of the opposing forces. Now, both Arvin Piscator and Brecht, definitely they reworked on the works of Aristotelian theory. Though this comes as a contrast to that, definitely Brecht acknowledges his gratefulness to Aristotelian theories. And Piscator, in political theatre, focuses on this political dimension. Okay, he tries to point out that the state should be a medium for social and political change. Piscator totally discards the concept of enjoyment associated with theatre. Okay, and the theatre should serve a sort of political engagement. Okay, political enlightenment, intellectual involvement, and audience participation. These three were the fundamental concepts. One is political enlightenment, second, intellectual development or intellectual involvement, and audience participation. So these three were the fundamental perspectives that they wanted to focus, and their target was the audience. And definitely this form of education to the people was vital. Why? Now, why they wanted to educate the people? The answer has its roots in Marxism, to advocate a social change. So this is what they wanted. They just tried to avoid this kind of passive receptive attitude of the audience. Okay, and they wanted to extend the impact of theatre even beyond the hall. Okay. Now, you find the name epic theatre is something contradictory, because Aristotle in his Poetics talked about epic and theatre. Definitely it is taken from Aristotle. On one hand, you have epic, which is narrative. You have tragedy, which is an imitation of an action. You have epic, where there are small episodes, sometimes disjointed. In tragedy, you have emotion, you have song, you have music, okay, you have choric role, and so many things. They have tried to fuse both these genres in order to create something new, something revolutionary. Their primary objective was to make the readers or the audience observe the play critically and see what emotion is obstructing them to see. Okay, so they should try to find the subtext of the stage performance. Brecht was opposed to the concept of a kind of totalized work. So here you can see the entire working of the epic theatre. Okay, so Brecht was opposed to the bourgeois theatre, which I talked about before, a theatre which tries to represent something as a kind of universality, okay, a totalized and integrated work, which is also termed as Jason-Kuhn's work. Okay, you have in the previous slide, the Jason-Kuhn's work is a kind of totalized and integrated artwork that creates a false harmony. Now, this term is derived from Wagner, and it refers to that theatre where everything works together in unison to create a single expression. And in doing this, they are trying to represent a kind of falsified reality. As a contrast to that, Brecht in his epic theatre is trying to is trying to show the audience that what they are actually seeing on the stage is a kind of artificial presentation. It is not a slice of life. Rather, it is something which is quite different from the life that we lead. Okay, and therefore, he proposes this concept of the alienation effect or the Verfremdungs effect. Now, alienation effect, I quote from Brecht, just 2 lines. It is a representation that alienates in one which allows to recognize its subject, but at the same time makes it seem familiar. So, at the same time, alienation effects creates a kind of defamiliarization. Now, what is this defamiliarization? You will see the same actors, you will see the same themes of good and evil, but the way that is presented to you is something unfamiliar. And this is done purposefully so that the audience takes it into consideration and thinks about the possibility or the reasons behind this kind of defamiliarization. In order to activate that, Brecht is speaking of double alienation. Now, how does this double alienation work? So, Brecht speaks of 2 kinds of alienation. On the first hand, the audience, the target is the audience. So, the audience should be separated or should be alienated from the stage performance. It means that they should not feel that they are one of the actors. They should not identify themselves with the actors of the stage presentation. If I play the role of Lady Macbeth, it doesn't mean that being an audience should become Lady Macbeth. Okay. So in this way, the audience should be alienated from the stage performance. This is the first type of alienation. And the second alienation is the alienation of the actors from the role that they are playing. This is very significant. Okay, so the actor who is playing the role of a king should retain his identity while playing the role. Just to explain this, I'll give you one example from a drama. So in a drama, Marij Shongbat, you know Marij, the mythological character, there it is shown that a peasant bends down before the king, the zamindar, asking for some money for food at the time of famine. But what happens? The zamindar comes and gives a condition that the peasant is bent down, skinny, very fragile. Okay. But the king says that, yes, I will give you money, but you will have to set the village on fire. Now this peasant stands up erect and protests in front of the zamindar. So this is enacted on the stage. At once, the director of the play comes on the stage and says to the actor that this is not your role. You have to be subdued, you have to be submissive, and you have to accept the money. And at once, the actor plays the role of the submissive patient. So can you understand this double alienation, this alienation of the actor from the role? So when the actor is just standing erect, we don't find that he is within the role. We find his identity. And the intrusion of the director on the stage is also done purposefully in order to make the audience alert. So this is also a very vital word. The audience should be critical and inquiring. Okay, this should be the response of the audience. They should not accept everything as it is. This concept of the epic theatre was later on carried forward in the concept of dialectical theatre, which focuses more on the Marxist philosophies. Okay. Now, in order to carry out this alienation effect, Brett devises some strategies, some interruptive devices to bring about this alienation effect. These are some of the strategies that I'm trying to show or discuss here. The first one is the episodic scenes. Episodic scenes is something simple. Whenever you read any play of Brecht, you will find that the entire drama is divided into short episodes, very often incoherent, disjointed, having a loose episodic structure, which disrupts the continuous flow of the action. And this emphasizes the possibility of intervention and change. Next, the narrative mode. Okay, this proposition of ideas and a kind of expression of that. I'll leave the next 2 points, and you see the last 3 points. Audience address. This I have already spoken, that there is direct address to the audience by the characters and also sometimes by the director or other characters who are involved in the stage performance. Brecht makes excessive use of songs, placards, posters, and so on in order to break this illusion of reality. Next, bright light and spotlights. The theater hall should be lighted properly. When we go to the theater, we find that it is dark because the focus is on the stage. But bright lights are given purposefully so that the actors can also see the reaction of the spectators. Okay. Now, I will move on to this concept of gestures and historicization. Just before that, I'll just refer to this concept of Marxism, which is there very much in its place, you know. Now, Brechtian theatre was to present a Marxist analysis of the society. And from this, he has developed, or he was inspired by the concept of dialectical materialism, which focuses on economy and the necessity for social change. Okay, so it is the economic base, okay, that defines the shape of a society. And Brecht's view of the dialectical theatre was grounded on the belief that due to this conflict of the opposing forces in the society, new forces would emerge, leading to renewed synthesis and creativity. So this is what it means by dialectical theatre. So opposing forces should be represented with the prospect that something new should emanate, which would, whether it would be good or bad for the society, that is not the issue. But something new has to come. Okay, so this was his objective. Now, one point that I would like to point out is also that that Brecht was very much indebted to Erwin Piscator, but he deviates from Piscator on the perspective that he was in favor of music and dance in drama, which Piscator was not. Okay, because these are the disruptive devices. Okay, and what he was opposing is the concept of catharsis. Okay, the catharsis, the Aristotelian notion of the catharsis, where the spectators are engrossed in the action and the audience get emotionally exhausted. Okay, so audience should derive pleasure, but that should be by participating in the stage performance. Okay, not by receiving emotions blatantly. Now I will come to the most important points, that is gestures and historicization. Now the word gestures is a fusion of 2 words, gesture and gist. Now gesture of the actors. Gesture means the action and the body language of the actors. Okay, in order to bring about the alienation effect. You remember the double alienation I talked about. And gist encodes the character's social position. So the actor as a human being has an identity of his own and he belongs to a social position. This comes in conflict with the gist he is bearing. That is the social position that the role that he is playing is trying to focus. Okay, so this justice, this gap, or the stage props or the words, the verbal, non-verbal language that are used. Okay, these represent the gestures of a play. So just you read the lines that are here in the PPT. Gestures is a socially significant gesture. It is a gesture, one which reveals the power relation between the person who makes the gestures, that means the actor who is doing it, and others. Others may refer to the identity of the actor, the audience, and anybody else. Okay, so it is a gesture. It may be through stage props, it may be through other technical devices like cross-dressing, okay, costume, and other images, placards, and so on. The sequence of gests that constitute a dramatic performance are signs that signify the social forces. So what is the utility of these gestures? You can understand that an individual is not the individual, but the individual is working under the influence of various social forces that are acting upon him. Okay, so this is the utility. You should remember that this character, the peasant, is doing this. It doesn't mean that the peasant is doing this. The peasant is forced to do this because of the social forces. So the entire human capacity can never be naturalized in drama. Okay, because of these acting social forces that influence it. The next point is the Brechtian historicization. And while talking about historicization, I would just like to point out that historicization is a powerful phenomenon in the Brechtian technique. And to Brecht, actually, class relations are a part of the class relations. Especially, his focus is on class relations. And all social relations are a part of a moving dialectic. That means all can be changed. All needs intervention. You can never say that it is fixed. There is subversion. Okay, later on you will study the subversion containment debate. Okay, later on. So the social relations are always in movement, liable to change, and it is the people, the common people, who are to bring about the change. So historicization preserves the distinguishing marks of the past and foregrounds the spectator's present perspective. Okay, so the past should be there. At the same time, the spectator's present situation should also be present. And it is re-examining the historical situation that is shown in order to focus what is missing. It is a kind of seeing that contradicts appropriation. Appropriation means a kind of passive reception of whatever is represented. There should be opposition. And historicization is also based on this concept that human history is an open horizon subject to change, which I've already talked about. So this is what I want to talk about, the Brechtian grammatical technique, the features of Brechtian technique. And this is Brechtian theory is very complex, but this is just the structure, the outline that I have given you. Now I will switch over to the play, The Good Woman of Szezswan. Now here I would just like to continue what Professor Sen has tried to say before. Now, when we talk about this kind of plays, okay, play, a drama is a performance text that Professor Sen has talked about, and therefore each and every performance changes. And moreover, whatever you read in the text, that is markedly different from what is represented on theatre. Therefore, we have the two concepts, drama and theatre. The word drama has its origin in the Greek word to do, while theatre has its origin in the word to see. So, drama is the textual aspect of the theatre, while theatre includes everything, the entire performance, the stage space, actors, audience, complex relation between the actors and the audience, both doing and seeing, practice and contemplation. So it involves everything. Moreover, while talking about good woman of Szechuan, another problem is that is the translation, okay, the adaptation. So when it is translated in English, definitely it will have a shortfall. So these are to be considered. You will find many differences in the different publications. Mostly the manuscripts in English, the texts which are available in English were based on the manuscripts supplied by Brecht in 1945. The first thing that I would like to point out is that the spelling says what. In some books, you will find Sezuan, you will find Setzun. Again, you will find another spelling that is Szechwa. Now, these are, from one perspective, it is because of the translation, and there is also a difference in the representation of the city and the province. Okay, so when Brecht was translating this, when Eric Bentley was translating the plays of Brecht, in the Parables for Theatre, he says that Brecht toyed with the ideas of his plays always being literally translated for publication and freely adapted for performance. This means Brecht was in favor of this translation and adaptation because he was very much open. Okay, he was continuously rewriting his plays, and therefore he loved this concept. And Eric Bentley further says that for stage purposes, I found that everything in The Good Woman of Szechuan had to be said more briefly and swiftly in English than in German. And I think the reader too will appreciate a terser, lighter textured piece of reading material. Okay, so there are so many approvals also in favor of this English translation. As I told you before, that this play was written at the time of his exile. It was written in between 1938 to 40, and it was produced in 1943. So here you have the publication date, that is 1943 in Zurich. And this play extends you beyond the theatre hall into a re-examination of the behavior of social life. Okay, so this is something very simple. You see the caption that I've given, the parable of good and evil. So is it a morality play? So let's see what it is actually. Okay, so this play is set in pre-war China in Szechuan. Okay, Sezuan, that is Szechuan, which is the capital of the Szechuan province. Sechwan. Okay, so there is this anomaly is there. So in some books again you will find the good person of Szechuan. All these are because of the translations. The entire drama is divided into prologue, 10 episodes. Okay, loose episodic structure is there, like as I told you about the epic theatre. It has interludes, the songs which are there as disruptive devices, and a very arresting epilogue. I think the translation that you have got there, the epilogue is not that powerful. In other translation, it is very much there. The story goes like this, that gods come to this place, Szechuan. The gods come in search of a good person, and they meet a water seller. Okay, and the water seller is also good, and he helps the god to find a good person. And the water seller knocks every house, but nobody is there to share a room with the gods. Okay, all have their own excuses. Only there is one woman, a prostitute, whose name is Shente, 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 who is a prostitute and who is the good woman who agrees to give a room or share a room with the gods. Now, she is also very poor, and she has a client for that night, and with that money she will pay the rent of the house. But charity comes first to her, to the good woman, to the motherly, affectionate woman, and therefore she sacrifices the client, sends him away, and shares the room with the gods. The gods become happy. says that you are the good woman and gives her a lot of money. The reward is 1,000 silver dollars for her good action. Can you see the pictures? The gods and Van. Okay, they are talking to each other. In the background, you see the stage props, which shows the different houses, okay, which is done on cardboard and paper cuttings. And here you see how the money is shown here, the dollar, how it is shown here in the second picture. And the gods are happy. You see all these smiling faces, happy to find a good woman. Okay, so this is Shane Te. Now, what happens with this money given by the gods? He's able to buy fortune. She's able to buy a fortune. She's able to buy respectability. The word good and respectable is harped at very often in the play. Okay, so she's able to buy this respect from the society because of money and becomes a part of the bourgeois status quo. But she is an innate good lady, cannot adjust with this bourgeois capitalism. And what happens? The legions of the extended family, the daters, they come trying to squeeze money from her. She realizes that it is not possible for her to survive in this way. So in order to, or in a struggle for existence, she creates her own alter ego through disguise in the character of Shui Ta. Can you see the two images, the female version and the male version? Shui Ta, she represents him as her own cousin. Okay, so all these pictures are available in Google. They may have copyright, but I have used it while presenting my paper in this PPT. And you see that Shane Te and Shui Ta, they are the male-female version, Te and Ta. So the word is also very much symbolic here, which shows this dichotomy. And it also hints at the social roles that men and women play in the society. The women fragile, delicate, motherly, the eternal feminine, you know, and the man capitalist, exploitative. Okay, so these are the common roles that we assign to men and women in the society. So in this way, she comes in the guise of Shuita. And Shuita represents the ruthlessness of capitalism and the labor exploitation. Finally, after some time, Shane Te falls in love with an airman whose name is Yang San. Okay, now San is also a male. Definitely he has to be a follower of this ruthless capitalism. And Shane Te falls in love with this man, with San. But San at one time admits before Shuita, that is the alter ego of Shane Te, that he wants to marry Shane Te because of her money. And at once Shane Te's marriage does not, love does not culminate into marriage. Now what happens? Shuita survives. He is able to extract money from others. Okay, and the business develops a lot. And the successful business in the capitalist market depends on taking rather than giving. This is what the Shenta-Shweta dichotomy shows. To balance this giving of the good person, the taking away of the bad person is equally necessary. This is what Brecht is trying to show through this kind of split roles. A new turn takes in the play when Shane comes to know that she is pregnant. So what happens when she comes to know about her pregnancy? She finds that it is time to erase herself. So she becomes invisible and Shuita takes her place. So Shuita becomes the entire owner of these tobacco company, and now he has prospered a lot. Okay, he and she, I keep it within a slash. Okay, so she prospers a lot in the guise of Shuita, and she becomes the king of the tobacco king, becomes a proprietor. Here you just see the stage props. Okay, you see the shop, how it is represented. Okay, so these stage props definitely alienate the audience. Never the audience will identify themselves with the actors. And you see the masks in the hand, where the other characters are not represented physically, but through the stage props. Now, this is also another stage prop. Here you see so many people. They are coming to the shop, and you see again cardboard characters. The children are represented in the way. Okay, dehumanize. So this process of dehumanization is shown here. And it also defamiliarizes the stage. We are familiar in seeing characters on stage, but here we see cardboard characters. Okay, which shows the rise of capitalism, brutality on the part of the takers and the sufferings of the proletariat. Now, finally, this lady becomes pregnant and she is out. Now, Wang is very much upset because the good woman is not present, and she goes and says to the gods that the good woman is not present, and the gods come and Shui Ta is arrested. Okay, because there is a kind of guesswork on the part of Wang that Shui Ta has killed the good women Shen Ta because of the property. So the cousin has killed the good women and they are taken to the court, and the gods come there as the judges. You see, this is a very important scene. At last, you have the court scene here. You see Shui Ta, but you can understand that he is pregnant. Okay, so the split role is very much predominant here. Very often in some stage productions, you will find that a man is playing the role of a woman or a woman is playing the role of a man. Okay, this is breaking our expectation that we will see a beautiful Shen Te on stage. Okay, and we will be attracted towards her. But we see a man in the place of Shen Te. So here you see, so she's pregnant and the gods come, they interrogate her. And after this interrogation, Shen Te cannot keep balance. She bursts out and she admits that actually she is Shen Te and Shui Ta is just a disguise. But the gods, you see how foolishly the gods react to this. The gods feel that the goodness is still there and she has to remain in this world in this way, and everything is as it should be. Everything is in order. This is what they feel finally. And you see that how she's groveling. Okay, finally, she's asking the gods that please give me some way so that I can come out of this situation. I cannot be evil for such a long time. Okay, so this Shen Te's dependence on the evil counterpart, Shui Ta, is itself self-defeating. And the split personality desperately tries to make the gods understand that serious dilemma. But the gods leave her in a state of absolute despair. You see that she is crying and the gods are singing the valedictory hymns, glorifying Shen Te's goodness. Okay, so if we question about the presence of the god, that are the gods to be here? So, or what are the function of the gods rather? Okay. And the play ends with the epilogue that instigates the attention of the audience. And the audience are also kept in a dilemma directly, which is pointing to the vicious monetary circles where even the spectator-audience relationship is also foregrounded. Now, this parable of good and evil runs throughout the play. Okay, and Brett forcefully raises the metaphysical question that why evil is permitted and why goodness is not in demand. And this is represented in the split personality of Shen Te and Shui Ta, and this dual roles play a very significant gestures. Okay, it reveals the social relations. I hope you can understand the male-female dichotomy on one hand and the difference between the capitalist and the proletariat that Shen Te was before. Okay, so everything is represented through the props, through the through the dual roles, split characters, and so on. The play, therefore, has a circular structure it completes, it ends also with the arrival of the gods who are useless in this present schematized world. Okay. Now, just I would like to go back to this picture of the songs. You see how the songs are represented, the interludes, through captions, through placards, through instruments, musical instrument, at the same time, the casual actors who are also present there. Now, I would move on to the thematic and technical aspects. Now, this kind of theatre is also known as the demonstrational theatre, something which demonstrates. And this theatre has its roots in the parable. Okay, the concept of the parable, the common motif of a parable you have here. Now, the feminist perspectives of the play is definitely very much predominant. The myth of a woman as the guiding principle, the symbol of goodness, is the concept of the eternal feminine we get from Goethe's Faust. And very often critics are of the opinion that Brecht's play was very much influenced by Beckett's Faust, because most of the women characters in his plays are the motherly characters, the divine characters, the sacrificing mothers. Okay. But what is interesting is that Brecht's female characters are admirable as they develop their womanliness into a form of political strength. Okay, so when we consider the goodness of this character, as pointed out by a critic, Shelley Ludge, is saying that her goodness does not appear to be a positive capacity. Rather, it is a negative inability because she cannot say no. And her goodwill does not arise from any moral conviction, but merely it is the easiest path for her. Okay, the easiest path to find approval in such a society because she is a prostitute, and also to offer resistance in a very submissive way. The splitting of this good of a person into a good exploited female and a very bad exploiting man also reveals the gender roles that are operating in the society. The prostitute saint is innocence, helpless, and the alter ego Shweta is attractive for the masculine power. Now, the actor who plays the role definitely performs the historically specified form of symbolic identification. Okay, so here historicization definitely comes into play. The crux of historicization is change, and alienation effects definitely foregrounds this process of dichotomy or this anomaly in the society by defamiliarizing the man-woman roles in one person. It is the man and the woman are played by a single character. Historicization, therefore, is a way of seeing, and it contradicts appropriation, as I have said before. Now, what Brecht says is that the spectators should become historians. Now, how historians? He refers to both the spectator's detachment, his critical position, and to the fact that she is writing her own history even as she absorbs messages from the text. Writing her own history means writing her story in her own way, rather rewriting it. Okay, and the dichotomy of the active male professional and the passive female proletarian mother demonstrates that while the division of class is a matter of history, this difference of gender is something natural. Okay, so, and therefore always these good women are mothers and men are high flyers. So this is the convention. What the play is trying to demonstrate how this process is at work. Now, again, we will find that in the play, the police officer comes and says that a solution to same-sex problem is that she get married. Okay, to get married in order to earn again respectability, and she should get an identity in the name of a man. In the dependence of these feminine aspects on the masculine and the sheer pain that a woman experiences in this world raises question of women's identity. And therefore, it seems more viable that one would balance between Shente and Shweta. In these answers raised in the epilogue, whether we need a new world or different gods, the spectators become alert and point out to the necessity of a social revolution, as social circumstances alone can call for a different world. And Brecht's primary objective is, I quote, change the world, it makes it. And therefore, in the demonstrational theatre, which is anti-illusionist, where there is alienation of the spectators, these are represented. This play is written in the form of a parable. So this is what parable is, that Roman Spears says. And parable gains a new dimension when it is infused with Marxist ideology. Okay. So parable is a made-up story, narrated to advance an argument. Therefore, a parable is an artificial story. And the Good Woman of Sichuan is a reworking of this ancient common motive of the gods judging human beings. Okay, it is an example of a parable that demonstrates a truth that could never be established by describing life naturally. Okay. So here, just you can understand the splitting roles, the props, the actor, and everything is presented in such a way that it disrupts the emotional engagement of the audience, and the valedictory hymns disrupt emotional engagement. And you will find that the sharp cries that I showed you before is definitely shows the fruitlessness of leading a good life. It questions the existence of goodness. And the escape of the gods from this pragmatic situation leaves the play open-ended and calls for a new world with a new gods. So this is what I have to say about the play. Now just I'll speak few lines on the impact of Brecht on Britain. Now Brechtian dramaturgy has become a legacy for the post-war situation because it was compatible to the epic theatre practices. It accommodated a space for political observation, and therefore mostly you will find that in the post-war era there is a hybrid British form of recognizable Brechtian theatre, but sometimes it was also unintentional. Okay. So Berliner Ensemble performed for the first time in Britain in 1956, and it was very popular, and the young left-wing dramatists were very much inspired by these ideologies, definitely because of these Marxist philosophies. And Martin Esslin also pointed out that Berliner Assembly can be a living example of what the subsidized theatre of that time could do and could be, and it silenced the critics who bothered about the sterility of this subsidized theatre. So the major left-wing political dramatists of the 60s and the 70s like John Arden, Edward Bond, Brenton, and also the feminist playwrights were very much inspired by Brechtian theatrical technique. Robert Polt was hailed as the British Brecht, okay, because of the influence. And these playwrights, they adapted, okay, they did not imitate directly, they adapted this form of the epic theatre and its revolutionary political consciousness. And also for the feminist playwright, it provided a very powerful medium because it is suggesting for a sort of alternative theatre, which breaks the hierarchy of the convention. So the influence is much greater. I would like to refer one book. The name of the book is After Brecht, British Epic Theatre. Just you can see it. I'm showing it to you. Anyway, okay, I'll show you later also. So After Brecht, British Epic Theatre by Janelle Renault. So in that book, you can find that how Brecht influenced the post-war theatre. Here you see the splitting roles, the impact of cross-dressing. This is another production image where you can find Shuita. Okay, you see the image of Shuita and Shente. A play is played. The person with the red colored dress. Okay, so that is a person who is playing both the roles, the Shweta and Shenta. This is another production picture. Now, finally, at last, if we question about the success of Brecht's epic theatre, definitely we can agree with Bamber Gascoigne, the great theatre critic, whose famous book is 20th Century Drama, where he says his techniques failed, fortunately, to eliminate the audience's emotional involvement with the character. And it is one of the major paradoxes about Brecht that instead of inspiring as he intended a simple working class audience to dispassionate thought, he moved an excited and international audience of intellectuals. So you see, on one hand, it is a tremendous impact of Brecht, and on the other, his intention of evoking a simple working class audience failed. Okay. What the critics say is that he was probably wrong to equate empathy with illusion, which is a peculiar property of naturalism. And Brecht's technique was directed as a reaction to naturalism. And you will find that these alienation process is also was there in the pre-naturalistic drama. You can find traces in the Greek theatre, in the Jacobean drama, the mysteries and the miracles. You can find this even in Shakespeare, the porter scene, the grave digger scene. Okay, so there you have the alienation effect. But these plays did not rely on illusion, yet they caused a sort of emotional engagement. Okay, so the problem is that, as critics feel, not I, that Brecht's theory was frequently experimented or represented by his most extreme statements. Okay, so the statements of the theoretical propositions that he made were in contrast to the things that he wanted to bring about. Okay, because of these inconsistencies, he makes a sympathetic protest. Brecht himself, he says, I cannot rewrite all the notes to my plays. You see, he wanted to rewrite the notes later on. And Brecht is definitely accused of being Marxist, typical Marxist blindness. And Heiner Müller, a very famous Brechtian critic and dramatist, rejects Brechtian fable as a closed form, and the audience accepts as a package, a commodity. But we should consider the fact that the Brechtian theory, with its gaps, with its inconsistencies, is not literary criticism. Okay, it is theatre, and theatre has its own theory. I end with the critic, that is Herbert Blau's comment, who in this debate, who says that theatre is theory or a shadow of it. In the act of seeing, there is already theory. Okay, so thank you. I stop here.
Thank you, Dr. Suranjana Bhadra Madam, for such an illuminating lecture. Now, may I request Professor Owen Mondal Sir, Assistant Professor and Head of the Department of English, Bankura Christian College, to conduct the interactive session. Over to you, sir.
Thank you, Suranjana, for that extremely illuminating, lucid, yet scholarly presentation. I was just telling Shoikodda that it is a signature Suranjana Bhadra lecture that we have experienced today. So I find that there are a number of questions posted in the chat box. So if you allow me, can I read those questions out?
Of course you can.
Okay. The first question comes from Shashwati Chanda. She asks
she's my colleague. She's my colleague.
Yes.
College. Though she's from a different stream, but still she is interested in this.
Right. So I find that it's a very interesting question she asks. From the theatrical point of view, is it really possible to alienate self from the character by an actor? It's a very basic and interesting question, I find.
Yes. The answer is there in the last part where I talked about the criticism. Okay, where Martin Esslin is saying that he is not successful in doing that. Okay, but these are disruptive devices. For the time being, what I feel is that for the time being, we may feel that we are one of them, but in the next moment, we will be alienated. This alienation definitely works. Okay, this is what I feel. When you see that Shente is becoming Shweta, it will appear as if you were waking up from a sleep and you were moving into a separate role. So this is what I feel, that in this way. So, but still, these inconsistencies are there. Okay, and this failure actually maybe made Brecht a more influential dramatist in the post-Brecht era.
Thank you. The next question is put by Shishak Ghosh. He asks, could you please tell me how genuine is the performance when Brecht's play is adapted from Indian version on stage with respect to German adaptation?
Now Shirshak is also my colleague in my present college.
Right.
She's also a very.
We are so glad to have them here. We are so glad to have them here.
Now, Shirshak, definitely drama is a performance art. I told you that theater is ephemeral. You can't question genuinity of a performance. Nowadays, you will find Oedipus appearing in Nandikar. You will find Oedipus appearing in Punjabi and Pajama. Okay, so the question of genuinity is put to doubt always. This is the theatrical phenomenon. This is a part of theater. This should be there. The ingenuinity. You should question this because it is a performance art. From one performance to another, it will vary definitely. And in Indian version, of course, but one more thing that I would like to point out, that when Berliner Ensemble first performed in Britain, the people did not know German, but still they were very much impressed by it. Similarly, in Indian drama, I spoke about Marit Shongad. Okay, that is based on this Brechtian dramaturgy. So definitely it has some influence on Indian theatre. But genuinity is always put to question. Okay, not in Indian context, but in any drama. Even in German, even if in German, the different production pictures that you will get, even in German language, there is no such genuinity. Thank you.
Thank you, Shuranjanadi. There's a question from Pooja Banerjee, one of your former students. Yes. She feels like the college days, and she likes to know whether, or rather, how Brecht's plays are being adapted in the present times.
Brecht now. If you read, so what do you want to know? Is it in the Indian context or in the West? So if it is in the West, I have talked about the political dramatist and the feminist playwrights. Okay, they are very much involved in adapting these techniques. Alienation effect is very much there. Collaborative theatrical strategy, then there's cross-dressing. These are very much present even in the present day. Okay, so it's very much there. And if you go through the third theatre, Devamitra posed the question in the previous session. So there also you will find some touches of Brecht. So I feel that it is very, very much present even in the present day.
Thank you. The next question comes from Debarati Ghosh.
Yes.
Okay. It comes from Debarati Ghosh. Ma'am, can you please share your observations on the text as re-establishing the second-class status of women in society as something accepted and propagated by the gods as well, and hence posed as something very natural?
I just can't understand. Text means, what do you want to mean? The drama?
Yeah, this particular text she has in mind, probably.
Okay.
Debarati Ghosh, are you there? Okay, Shuranjanadi, please continue.
Okay. So she's trying to say that the text is re-establishing the second-class status? Yes. No. Yes, you may feel that second-class status of that women is the second sex. That is shown, but that is shown with a kind of defamiliarizing attribute, so that you can see the role that he is playing, the character is playing, and you can judge that what she is playing, or the role that the gods are playing, is not compatible in the present scenario. If you read the epilogue, there you will find there are a series of questions. that do we need new gods? So these are the questions that the author poses, because this is the scenario. So we need an alternative God, we need an alternative society. So again, change is the primary goal.
Devarati Ghosh has another question. Is the cross-dressing in the text referring to gender fluidity, as Judith Butler talks about in
Definitely, of course it's there, of course it's there. Gender, both sides. On one hand, it shows the politics, the double roles, and on the other, the fluidity of gender. That whether cross-dressing particularly focuses on this fluidity of gender, that performativity of gender. That gender is nothing but a performance. Now we don't have these sex gender binaries. Okay, it is definitely a performance. We perform our gender role. Being sexually a girl, you can play the role of a man. Okay, so gender is performative. Definitely, it's very much there, and a very good observation also.
Sudipta Banerjee asks a question. In the punishment of Shente, the feminine, because of Shuita, the masculine, if we go by the proletariat and capitalist struggle, then is it the suffering of the proletariat what Brecht is trying to show? Once again, could you please explain the role of the gods at the end of the play?
Oh, definitely. The suffering of the proletariat is there. The rise of capitalism is shown here. This transition from the proletariat to the capitalist. But still there is also no peace. So the situation is same. So again, you can never come to a firm conclusion. This is open-ended. Surely the struggle is there. The proletariat is suffering. This is something obvious, and this is very much shown here. And the punishment of Shanti now is punished from the very beginning. Giving money to Shanti was also a punishment. Okay, so she's being punished from the very beginning, and Shantis are destined to be punished in this capitalist setup. Okay, so it's not because of Shweta. On the other hand, you see, Shanti is also sustaining Shweta. Sorry, rather Shweta is sustaining Shanti. The evil is sustaining the good. Without good, you have also read in Blake, without innocence there is no experience. So without Shanta, there cannot be any existence of Shanti. Okay.
Thank you, Shranjali. We will take two more questions. One by Shreyanta Mukherjee. Brecht said, "Don't stare so romantically." But in the text, The Good Person of Season, there are some references to music, songs, etc., where every major character sings. Madam,
Yes.
what is your opinion about that?
I spoke about the songs, definitely, that these are disruptive devices. Okay, song doesn't mean that it is to be romantic. You see the songs, how it is represented. I showed you through placards, through different characters involved in different activities. So when you are listening to the song, at the same time, you are also observing what the other characters are doing. So it also it breaks your engagement with the stage performance with the previous episode that took place. It comes as a gap, and it provides a sort of entertainment. It's entertaining. Okay, it breaks your engagement with the stage performance, and at the same time, it also alienates you from the song itself, because you are at the same time observing what other characters are doing. I showed it in my slide also, that all the characters there are not involved in the song. Others are also observers there.
In the chat box, Suranjana, I see there is an observation by Akash Ghosh that I think the alienation effect is not meant for the actor, actress, rather it is for the audience. I think Akash is, surely mistaken, because Brecht talks about, as you also say, Brecht talks about both the alienations.
Definitely. Now, that is what Brecht is trying to focus. He wants to give a shock to the audience. Okay, if you identify yourself with Desdemona or Cleopatra or Macbeth, then how can you think intellectually? If you are emotional and if you cry, can you ever act rationally? You can never. So, this alienation is done purposefully. Now, how far it is successful, that remains an open question. But Brecht's intention was for the double alienation.
There's a question by Shormishta Moitro.
Yes.
Whether this can be
my
called
senior TV of my previous of my college, of my present college.
Yes, whether this can be called an interpreter's drama. The director can fit it in the situation if he chooses.
Yes, sure, Mr. The definitely interpreter's drama. So here the dramatist is leaving the play. Okay, everything is the interpreter's drama. Okay, so very much in line with the reader response theory.
And a question from my colleague, Dr. Narugopal Mukherjee. Could you say something on the Chinese and Japanese traditions that influenced Brecht so much?
Yes, so this is something which is also difficult for me. I am only familiar to a certain extent about the no plays. Okay, but apart from that, Naruda, I'm not that much competent to focus on this aspect, but definitely I will try. So this is a question which I will also try to find out the answer. Thank you, Dada, for this question.
Thank you so much, Ranjana. Yes.
Actually,
Naruda, if you know something, please share with me also.
yeah, Brecht actually was very much influenced by three different traditions. One is Russian tradition, the other is Chinese tradition, and the third one is Japanese tradition, as you spoke of, for drama. And Chinese tradition, actually, alienation effect was very much there in Chinese theatrical tradition, and Brecht, as he said in his book, Brecht Epic Theater, he said that he acknowledged that he was very much influenced by Chinese alienation effect. And also Russian drama, because in Russian drama also we find that what he said, the fourth wall to be broken.
Yes.
And in Russian drama, the costumes, the music, all these produce that kind of alienation effect, which what we find to be there in Brechtian drama or Brechtian drama, whatever you say. Okay. Anyways, thank you so much, Suranjana. I learned so many things because that's also my favorite area. Okay.
So that I can understand. This is your favorite area.
Thank you, Suranjana. Thank you, sir. Now over to my student Tathagoto. Tathagoto, are you there?
Yes, sir. Am I audible?
Yes, you are.
Thank you, sir. Now may I request my junior Annesha Pal, student of the UG 4th semester Bakura Christian College, to formally conduct vote of thanks on behalf of the department. Over to you, Annesha.
Annesha, you are not audible now. Hello, Annesha.
Sir,
You are audible now, yes.
okay, sir. Thank you, Tathagata, for this opportunity. I feel privileged enough to propose, on behalf of the Department of English, Bakura Christian College, our indebtedness to our erudite resource persons today. Professor Dipankar Sen sir and Dr. Suranjana Bhadra madam, who have been kind enough to spare their valuable time despite their hectic schedule. On behalf of all the participants, I acknowledge with sincere gratitude and thankfulness some new perspectives of studies and further researches that they have opened up for us through their insightful and extremely engaging deliberation. Thank you, sir, and thank you, ma'am. I humbly acknowledge the huge participation of the faculty members of different institutions, research scholars, and students, either over the Google Meet Forum or YouTube Live. They have been kind enough to listen to the lectures with their attention and inquisitive enough to interact with our respective resource persons. Thank you all. We will meet again tomorrow at 11 a.m. with two eminent speakers, Dr. Pradipta Sham Chaudhary sir, Assistant Professor of English, University of North Bengal, and Professor Himatri Lahiri sir, the former Professor of English, the University of Bardwan, and the Professor of English, Netaji Subhas Open University. Please join us tomorrow at the scheduled time. Thank you all. Thank you very much.
So let us call it a day today. Thank you so much, Ranjanadi.
Thank you so much.